الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين على آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Good evening. Jazakumullah khair for joining us for this evening's webinar. This evening's webinar is called Spiritual Reflections on Coping with COVID-19. And I am so pleased to have all of you here with us. I know on Tuesday evening in this time, there are so many other amazing webinars that are occurring at the same time, and you chose to be here with us. So Jazakumullah khair for being part of our program this evening. And we hope that inshallah, that this webinar is beneficial for you and your loved ones. This will be recorded as well, so the recording will also be made available to all of you afterwards, inshallah. So my name is Zainab Chaudhry. I am the director of the CARE office in Maryland. And for those of you who might not be familiar with CARE, CARE is America's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization. We have our headquarters based in Washington, D.C. and Capitol Hill. We have about 30-some chapters and offices in about 20-some states around the country. And I serve as the Maryland liaison, but alhamdulillah, the organization works to meet the needs of the Muslim community in a variety of ways. And in the course of this lockdown with the stay-at-home order, obviously many of our organizations have had to shift the way that we provide services. And with Ramadan right around the corner, one of our priorities has been working with our communities to ensure that we are able to meet the challenges of this very unique Ramadan. And Imam Tarif, I know that you and I were speaking about this earlier, about subhanAllah, the opportunities that we have in this Ramadan to really truly partake of all of the blessings that are available. So we're very excited to have a wonderful lineup of speakers and panelists who are with us today. And I will be co-hosting this night with Iman Imran, who is joining us from College Park. Assalamu alaikum, Iman. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well, alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm doing alhamdulillah well. I pulled out the Ramadan decorations a little while ago, so trying to get in the Ramadan spirit.
Oh, I should do that. Yeah. So the Ramadan decorations are still in the back of the closet, but I'll bring them out tonight, inshallah. My name is Iman Imran. I am CARE's legislative intern for the Maryland office. I work directly under Sister Zainab. Well, she's right next to me on the screen, so that's why I'm pointing this way. Yeah, on my screen, she's right next to me. I've been interning with CARE since January of this year. Yeah, that's my short bio.
And we're so excited to have you be part of the co-host. I'm excited to have you co-host this with me, inshallah. And I think that the conversation tonight, as I was mentioning, it's going to be focused on preparing for Ramadan and coping with some of the challenges that our communities are facing in the context of this current pandemic. And so we're very blessed to have tonight here with us Sheikh Mikhail Smith, who is joining us from Texas. We have Dr. Sadira Ahmed, who is from the director of the Family Youth Institute, based out of Michigan, I believe. And we also have Imam Tariq Shraim, our own superstar Imam, mashallah, based in College. Is it College Park, Imam Tariq, or College Park?
Yes, College Park.
College Park, great, mashallah. He's a Muslim chaplain at the University of Maryland, College Park. So Imam, maybe you could take off with the introductions with the first panelist, Iman.
Sure. So Sheikh, it's a very long bio. I will try to read it as clear as I can. Sheikh Mikhail Ahmed Smith is an instructor at Qalam, and he's a teacher at the Qalam Seminary and online at Qalam Connect. He travels around the country conducting classes and seminars, like, for example, prophetic empathy. You can listen to him regularly on the Qalam podcast, including the Purification of the Heart series. Sheikh Mikhail previously served as a resident scholar at the Islamic Society of Annapolis and the Islamic Society of Baltimore. He grew up in a deeply spiritual Christian home in Buffalo, New York, and at the age of 18, he embraced Islam after reading the Quran and the autobiography of Malcolm X. He then enrolled at the Dar ul-Ulum al-Madaniya in Buffalo, New York, where he completed his memorization of the Quran. He continued his studies in Jamia Abu Nur in Damascus, Syria, and in 2012, he earned his bachelor's degree in Islamic Studies at the Dar ul-Ulum Canada in Ontario. He is the author of With the Heart in Mind, a book exploring the moral and emotional intelligence of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he currently resides in Dallas, Texas, with his wife and 3 children.
And I'm proud to say that I have purchased a copy of that book, mashallah. It's on my bookshelf.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Glad it's beneficial, inshallah. We have cats now too, so that's our new addition to the family.
Ooh, how many cats, if I can ask?
So I'm supposed to not be sharing the information because we don't want to get Ayin or another, apparently. But yeah, we have two small little kittens. They're doing okay. One of them is a bit sickly, but we're trying to figure out if it's just them adjusting or not. But so far, that's the addition. So the family has grown technically.
It's a blessing. Anyway, I'm sure the kids are thrilled to have pets to play.
Yeah, it's actually been very interesting to watch. You know, I don't want to like start talking about this, but you know, we're talking about our families and stuff, but to watch the children interact with another, you know, living being in the house and have to be gentle with it and caring for it. I think they learn a lot through that. So it's been fun so far watching them acclimate to that.
Our next panelist is Dr. Sadira Ahmed, who is the director of the Family and Youth Institute. She holds a PhD in clinical psychology and a master's in biology. She also serves as an associate editor for the Journal of Muslim Mental Health and has a private clinical practice in Canton, Michigan. Her areas of interest include risk behaviors and protective factors of Muslim adolescents and young adults, promoting culturally and religiously meaningful psychotherapy, and skills-based parenting and marital interventions to strengthen families. Dr. Ahmed has published numerous journal articles, book chapters, and is a co-editor of the book Counseling Muslims, Handbook of Mental Health Issues and Interventions. She speaks nationally and has been invited as a subject matter expert to events organized by the White House, the Health and Human Services, Substance Abuse Mental Health Service Administration, and Department of Education. Dr. Ahmed has also been a community organizer at both the grassroots and national levels for more than 30 years. Primarily focusing her energies on the American Muslim youth development, marriage preparation, and parenting. Jazakallah khair for joining us, Dr. Ahmed.
I'm glad to be here.
And our third panelist is Imam Tarif Shraim, and he's once again the Muslim chaplain at the University of Maryland College Park. And he provides pastoral care to people of all backgrounds and frequently lectures on faith, spirituality, and emotional development at various institutions in the DC area. He's passionate about working with individuals and communities to facilitate positive growth, and he lives in Maryland with his wife and their twin daughter and son.
And 2 cats.
Oh,
And 2 cats.
Wow, okay.
We'll talk, Imam Mikhail.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. I love it.
I foresee a swapping of cat stories here.
Yes, this is going to be great. I don't have many yet. The only story I do have is that I'm allergic to cats, actually. So we had to get like a hypoallergenic cat. And so I'm getting used to it. So we'll see.
And with that, inshallah, we'll get right into some of the questions. I know that we only have about an hour or so, and there's a lot of different kinds of pieces of this topic that we want to unpack in the next hour. So Sheikh Mikhail, inshallah, we'll start with you. So one of the conversation pieces that comes up frequently is the fact that for the Muslim communities, not just nationally, but globally, this is the first Ramadan of its kind where we are being forced to socially isolate and distance ourselves from one another. But even though it's the first Ramadan of its kind for us, this is not the first Ramadan historically where communities have observed and prayed in isolation or of themselves. Can you provide some historical context on previous instances where Ramadan was similar to the Ramadan we're about to experience, inshallah?
That's a great question. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. So that is a great question because I think by understanding or seeing that there's people before us that have excelled us in spirituality and kind of paved the way in spirituality, that they've experienced things, that we're experiencing things that they have gone through too, and given us an example. The best example that comes to my mind, which has been kind of my inspiration, is that many of the first generation, I'm talking like Sahaba themselves, they preferred kind of to have this kind of Ramadan where it was not as social, but more spiritual and focused on their own inner development. And so that's where I think we get the first example of people using Ramadan to be this moment of self-development and spiritual maturation through long moments of reflection, long moments of being by themselves with dua, with Quran and things like that. And just as a personal note, I normally didn't share this because it's a personal thing of mine. But ever since I memorized the Quran, I would always want to lead Tarawih. And since I've moved to Texas and moved around a bit, there were many years where work reasons, things like that, I wasn't able to lead in the masjid. So for a long time, I would go pray Isha in the masjid and go back home and pray my Tarawih at home. And I would do that personally at that time because I felt it was better for me. I could focus more on the Quran. I was there with my family. My kids could pray with me. We could, take breaks in between the Taraweeh. And it was just it was such a beautiful feeling. And so this was kind of like my own personal practice. And I had examples from Sahaba, from the early generation of many who would, yes, pray in Jama'ah for Isha, but then they would want to pray their Taraweeh, their Nafil by themselves. Now, the hard part about this is, not everyone feels that they have that strength to do it by themselves. Not everyone feels, many people feel that, if I don't have the social encouragement, I'll miss out on a lot of the ruhani or spiritual benefit that I was getting from all those people around. And to those people, what I would say is, first and foremost, the purpose of this webinar is to remind you that you still have an ideal and beautiful opportunity to connect to Allah. That isn't gone. That is there. And as the other panelists will speak about as well, perhaps it's just as there as in any other year before. But what you also have is different organizations from around the country that are going to be offering so many things online to kind of supplement some of what we were missing in person. And so just to briefly answer your question, so I don't monopolize the whole discussion, the example of personalized Ramadans and spending time by yourself, right? Spending time and focusing just on yourself. I think the best example of that is the first generation. There are many examples of Sahaba who themselves preferred that month to be a month between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when they had to go, because Islam has, we have to be in Jama'at sometimes, we have to go to Jummah, then they would be there. But the moment they got a chance to pull back, to be by themselves, to be with Allah, then they would take those opportunities because they understood that in those quiet moments, those moments where there's just us and Allah, that is where the relationship can be built the strongest. And one last example, and then I'll pass the mic. When we look at how Allah prepared our Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, for the coming of revelation, we see that hubbiba ilayhi al-khala, which simply means that being by himself was made beloved to him. And so this is it's a slippery slope, because many of us, when we're by ourselves, then it can have a negative effect sometimes. And so we like the community. In this example, we find to prepare him for that spiritual growth, there were moments where he was made to love being alone. And one of my favorite books right now that I have right here, one of my favorite books is a book by Cal Newport called Digital Minimalism. And it's really about unplugging and spending more time by yourself and learning how to be alone. I think there's so many of us that, and we see the memes now, we see social media of people not knowing what to do when they're by themselves and when they don't have all of these outlets. And so he speaks on it on a different level about, cutting back some of the social media networks and things like that. But my point being is that there's a lot of benefit in spending time alone, in reflection, in meditation. A lot of spiritual growth, mental growth, emotional growth can happen in those quiet moments. And so I would say, to answer your question, that my inspiration comes from the first generation of companions, who many of them prayed their Taraweeh and spent their Ramadan I mean, not as alone as we're going to do it. We're going to not have, Jum'ah and Jama'ah, but when they had the opportunity, spent it by themselves. And so that's how I would kind of, look for an example from that first generation.
SubhanAllah. I mean, the idea, the concept of learning to be alone and to embracing that and not feel lonely, right? Because sometimes I think people being alone and being lonely, meaning like when you're alone, you're not feeling that you're alone by yourself. Iman, did you want to ask the next question about the mental health component of this to Dr. Ahmed? I know that that's been heavy on a lot of people's minds as well.
Yeah. So, with the whole being alone and not knowing what to do, a lot of Muslims who do struggle with depression and struggle with anxiety and any other mental health issue, it's a struggle. It's a hard time for them. So what would you recommend, or like, what is your advice? Because Muslims' mental health issues often get told that, their iman isn't strong enough, that they should just pray and read more Quran. And while yes, these are all tools that we can use to feel better, right? That's not the only thing. So what is your take on that?
Sure, that's an awesome question. A lot of people are asking that and have a lot of questions. So let's start off with first kind of dispelling some of the myths and that people may have. One of the things is iman, having iman, using salah and dua, all of that are tools that you can use to help cope with mental health issues. But mental health issues is like any other kind of medical condition where, there's a biological component, there's an environmental component, interact together and can get worse in conditions like we're in right now. So if somebody already is struggling with a certain issue or topic, when you're isolated from your social support, when you're not able to do your daily routine, all of those things kind of come more to the forefront. And so recognize that, one, this is an issue. When we look at the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we see that in times of stress, in times of sadness, he really took it upon himself to really console the community. So when one of the young companions, Umayr radiallahu anh, his little bird passed away, he didn't make fun of him. He didn't, he helped him. He was there. He provided that space for him, right? And at the same time, at Battle of Qandaq, like the trench, right? When the companions were really kind of stressed about what was going to happen and how things were going to, what they're going to do, he really used that opportunity to inspire hope. And so to recognize that everybody's going to react to different situations differently, and to really create that space and understanding for them. And so when we look at what's happening right now, that's why I recently did a survey of Muslim Americans and how they're dealing with COVID. And one of the things that we found was people were really stressed. And with that stress, they're really concerned about their physical and mental health. They're concerned about kind of the social gatherings and not being able to be connected with people. And so with that, then the question is, well, what do you do with that? Right? What do you do with that level of stress, and how do you handle it? And so some of the things that you want to consider is really, one, being mindful, being intentional about your actions, thinking about how am I using my time? What am I doing? Is this getting me where I want to go? The other thing is to really think about movement. If you're constantly in front of the TV, in front of the computer, if you're just kind of static, you're not doing anything, that's going to have an impact on your health as well. You also want to make sure you're having meaningful connections. And so meaningful relationships, reaching out to people if you can't see people, if that was a way you kind of got some help and support, make sure to have that opportunity to connect with people. And then really mastery, so the 4 M's, mastery would be really to think about, what are you good at? How did you survive a situation like this beforehand? What are the things that gives you happiness and inspiration? So really think about the 4 M's, mindfulness, movement, mastery, and meaningful relationship. Really try to see, well, what are you missing right now? What of these 4 areas do you need to implement and integrate into your life? And so when we think about this aspect, we have to kind of think about Ramadan. right? And so Ramadan, for many of us, is associated with lots of memories, going to people's houses for iftars, going to the masjid, a lot of positive energy. And so now what we're finding is, with the survey that we had done, there really a lot of questions of an anxiety about what are we going to do? What's it going to look like? How am I going to have that spiritual energy that I used to get from my community? And so again, you want to evaluate, what do you need to do in this situation to derive that spiritual strength? Yes, there's going to be that loss, but are there alternative ways that you can bring that energy? When we think, Imam Mikhail shared some different ideas and suggestions, but when we think about what else can we do, what are the other examples that we can take from, in addition to the Sahabis, right? We have the example of Yunus alayhi salam and him being swallowed by the whale. He took that opportunity, instead of looking at it and kind of being in despair, he took that as an opportunity to purify himself. And so can we reframe the situation? And so part of what you could do is really look at the different stories of Yunus alayhi salam, Yusuf alayhi salam, the prophets, example of Hajar alayhi salam, and how she handled being alone with her son, and really going through all of these examples of the believers and finding spiritual meaning from that. In addition to all that, you really want to try to channel your energy, right? You want to channel, because if you're online, numbing yourself, decreasing your energy, it's really going to have an impact on you. And so really thinking about, one, what can you do with the energy, kind of like the mastery, what are you good at? And how can you use that to connect with people? How can you use that to make a difference in your surrounding? And you can do a lot of volunteer work. You can be involved, and you can write. You can use all of those different things that you can do. Think about what you want to do and what you're good at, and use it to kind of give meaning to your life. And when you're doing that, that will also kind of make you feel productive. But at the same time, you don't want to be productive for the sake of productiveness. You want it to be meaningful and relaxing as well. And so really thinking about, well, what do you want to do during this Ramadan? How are you going to use it? And so we have a lot of different techniques that you can look on. We have a FYI well-being toolkit that really gives ideas on, if you're feeling stressed out, these are the different things you can do. Now, if having done all of these resources and ideas, you're still struggling, then reach out to a mental health professional. I mean, they're there for a reason. If you're struggling with navigating what's going on in your daily life, and you're not really sure how to do it, reach out to someone. Anxiety and depression is a common cold in mental health. It's really easy to address if you have the right tools. And for a lot of these things, there are a lot of things that you can do to help navigate how you're feeling and struggling with that. And please, I would recommend you reach out to a community.
Dr. Ahmed, Jazakallah khair. I think the 4 M's that you shared are so powerful. And the toolkits that the FYI produces have been so incredibly useful. I know that in my work with the community, whenever we have cases where we run into community members, or we hear from community members who are struggling with either depression or anxiety or thoughts of suicide, things like that, we always refer them to the FYI as one of the resources. Is there a website that you can share that anybody who views this webinar can also access some of that content, inshallah?
Sure. If you go to thefyi.org, thefyi.org, it stands for the Family and Youth Institute. What you'll find is, if you search for toolkits, there are a number of different toolkits that people could really use at this time. You have first of all, the well-being toolkit, which really highlights, we took all the different issues the community was facing, whether it's stress from dealing with the anxiety, or it's dealing with the transition of working from home and schooling and trying to manage the kids, and how to maintain a sense of a schedule, or what to do if you're struggling with your parents who are elders. Like, all of these resources that we're struggling with really gives a step-by-step approach of, okay, these are the issues that are going on, this is what you can do, and this is where you can get additional information. And so that is one resource. And then one thing that we just released, like literally a few minutes ago, is how to navigate Ramadan in this current pandemic. We're not going to the masjid, but that's okay. There's so many things that we can do, and really gives ideas of how to cultivate that sense of spirituality within the house.
Jazakallah khair so much for sharing that. And I know I myself, when we get off this webinar, I'm going to be looking for that toolkit, because that's something that I think will be very useful and beneficial for everybody. Inshallah, Imam Tarif Shrim, we were speaking earlier in the week about the idea that this Ramadan, even though there are so many challenges that our communities are facing in the context of the pandemic, and that initially, like our first instinct is to not look forward to it, or we almost, sort of are reluctant to think about the thought of Ramadan coming, just because of the fact that there are so many challenges. But that in fact, this could actually be the best Ramadan yet that our communities have ever experienced in our lifetimes. And you shared some thoughts that I felt were so powerful and poignant, and especially in the context of your work as a Muslim chaplain, the flagship chaplaincy that you operate at the University of Maryland College Park. Can you share some thoughts and wisdom in terms of how, especially younger Muslims, but just our communities in general, can cope with not only cope, but also thrive, inshallah, in this Ramadan, and really make the most of it as possible?
It's an honor and pleasure again to be here. A few thoughts, inshallah, that come to mind. Working, actually, mashallah, Dr. Samir would speak, and would lead the way on this subject. Speaking of mindset and the ability to kind of frame our minds and the impact and the ripple effect of this, people's struggles are mostly in the battlefield of the mind. And it's an amazing thing when you look at the Quran and the conversation about what's going on in our heads. So Allah speaks of two conversations that can happen, summarized in a beautiful verse where He says, "Ash-shaytan ya'idukum al-faqra wa ya'murukum bil-fahsha. Wallahu ya'idukum maghfiratan minhu wa fadla." So the shaitan, He says, commands you, whispers to you, to instills in you these thoughts of poverty, and commands you to obscenities, while Allah promises you forgiveness, blessings, and bounties. So what Allah is speaking about is two possible conversations. One of them is false, which comes down to the whispers of the shaitan that comes to paint the thoughts in our heads, with the world being so gloomy, and with me not making it, with Ramadan is going to be the worst ever. These are, subhanAllah, thoughts in our heads that are embedded. And when we dwell on them and ruminate on them and dwell on them, perhaps that's what we'll end up seeing, because how can you see an open door if you've convinced yourself that the door is shut? Allah presents an alternative conversation. It's rooted in truth. It's not just another conversation. It's truth. It's haqq. And it's the only haqq is Allah Azza wa Jalla. And He says, it's Allah Azza wa Jalla that I invite you in your journey of life to reflect on. Now that demands reflection. It's not going to just stumble on us if we don't make an effort. Allah says, I promise you forgiveness and blessings and a bounty. Imagine now a shifting of the thinking that we have from, this is Ramadan. Absolutely, it is difficult. And by the way, there is no such thing as no hardship in life. We know that that's part of the path. And again, Allah al-Haq told us that. So that sets the expectations. But imagine if I shift my thought from, this is going to be a very unfortunate, sad, devastating Ramadan. I'm a poor me, I'm going to miss out on everything. How come? If I dwell on that thought, perhaps that's what I'll end up having. As opposed to believing in the possibility of the deepest healing, transformation, mercies, forgiveness from Allah. Why? Because Allah said so. Not because I said so. Because imagine if we shift the thought to what Allah said. After all, who is it that presented this trial to us? Allah. Well, what does Allah say about Himself? Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, the infinitely merciful, the infinitely forgiving, the infinitely, compassionate, the infinitely wise, the infinitely knowledgeable. Just anchoring our thoughts in the fact that the one who decreed for this pandemic to occur, regardless of our contributions to, to the bringing about of this crisis to this earth, because we have a hand in what happens, but ultimately it is decreed by Allah Azza wa Jal. Imagine shifting the thoughts to Allah decreed this. Qadr of Allah. Qadr Allah wa ma sha'a fa'al. Allah does what He wants to do, and regardless of our ability to understand it or not, it's in the hands of the one, and His hand is all good. He's infinitely wise, and He wants nothing but good for you and me. Once we believe in that, will see Ramadan differently because Allah decreed for this Ramadan to be different. And I'm going to say something amazing about this Ramadan. I say to people, especially young people, I say, well, in your life, can you possibly remember a Ramadan that is going to be like this Ramadan? 10, 20 years, 30 years from now, you're going to live to talk to your children, grandchildren about it. This will be the Ramadan and the time of your life that will stand out. And speaking beautifully, like hearing Dr. Samira and Imam Mikhail speaking about the experiences of isolation and so forth and its significance in this epic transformation. I say, think of the notion of the fast. Allah presented hardship for us through the fast. It is hard. But what are we supposed to do in the fast? Abstain. Abstain from things that consume us for one purpose, for the heart to become humble in reflection upon Allah Azza wa Jalla. It's not going to just stumble on us. We have to abstain. I'm actually telling people, you've been blessed with double fasts this year. The fast of Ramadan that you act upon, you say, I'm going to intend to make the fast and I'm going to abstain from food and drink from dawn till sunset. But what about the other fast that Allah began before Ramadan? Think about it. He cut us off from all distractions. Isn't He the one who says, Alhaakumut takathur? Well, we are comfortable in our lives. That's why this thing kind of upended our lives, because we are used to all these experiences. And once they're taken away from us, we're uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable. Allah cut us off from all modes of distractions. We cannot even be outside to be distracted, locking us up in a formal fast before the fast, so to speak. I say, subhanAllah. Again, the infinitely wise who decreed this to set us up for an experience that is not necessarily comfortable. But I actually say to people, when has growth ever occurred but on the frontiers of discomfort? Now, we resist discomfort, but it's only in discomfort that we can grow. And Allah promises assistance, divine assistance. I say, subhanAllah, what an opportunity to connect in this moment of seclusion with Allah, as all the prophets have done before us, because it demanded trust. And by the way, when they were tested, they were not necessarily aware of the purpose, but they trusted. Here's Allah giving us a Ramadan that is difficult, that is unique, a crisis that we cannot understand. Isn't that an opportunity for trust and surrender? Exactly. Because how else are we going to nourish and nurture our ability to trust in Allah if it is not confusing and overwhelming and full of uncertainty and full of discomfort? So I'd say epic opportunity for that growth in the womb of discomfort, because in the darkness of the womb is where birth happens. New life emerges. It has to be within the dark that, subhanAllah, the light emerges. And we're uncomfortable with it when it happens, but it's all blessings and mercies of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And I would say two key things for the month of Ramadan indeed. The condition of the heart, because oftentimes we think it's all in the limbs. And maybe Allah wants us to learn that, it's not your efforts. It's a journey of the heart that informs the limbs. And we need to yearn. If we're not yearning and trusting that Allah will bless us in this month of Ramadan, it will be a normal Ramadan and maybe subnormal. But if we plan that thought that this will be the most astounding Ramadan by the will of Allah Azza wa Jal, astounding results will happen, because Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ana inda dhanni abdi bi, I am as my servant thinks of me, which means your thoughts and beliefs will shape what happens to you. And number two, I'm going to wrap with this, assistance of Allah. We can do things on our own. Okay, if this is going to be difficult, how about to prepare for Ramadan and to make this Ramadan into the most extraordinary? To say, Ya Allah, this is overwhelming for me. I'm turning to you to ask Ya Allah for your assistance. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. You alone we seek help from. How about learning how to better rely on Allah, especially in extraordinarily difficult times, because that's part of the initiation in the faith, turning to Allah for help, and Allah will never disappoint.
SubhanAllah. That's powerful. Those are such powerful thoughts. SubhanAllah. Jazakallah khair, Imam Tari, for sharing those with us. Iman, did you want to ask the next question about specifically the advice for new Muslims who are experiencing the Ramadan for the first time? We've actually received, subhanAllah, so many questions about this particular topic because Muslims who are observing Ramadan for the first time, they are going to be facing even more challenges than Muslims who are used to observing Ramadan. So did you want to take that one, Iman?
Sure. new Muslims, especially during Ramadan, during Eid, this is a time of loneliness, essentially, right? And, you have a lot of new Muslims that can't practice in their homes, and now they're kind of isolated with their families, and they can't observe Ramadan the way that they want to. So what advice would you have, or words of reassurance and guidance for new Muslims? Just whoever wants to talk. So it's for all of you.
Oh, it's for all of us? Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's important as you mentioned, the struggle is real, as they say. Like for a new Muslim, it's you feel alone. You definitely feel alone during some of these moments where everyone comes together. Eid is very difficult. Ramadan is kind of a moment where you feel more a part of the community. Generally speaking, communities are very much more welcoming, and you see so much life and everything's going on. And I've had funny situations where people became Muslim in Ramadan, and then the day after Ramadan, they come to the masjid and they're like, "Where's everybody at?" Like, "Oh, Ramadan's over now." It's like, "Oh, okay, it's not as live as it used to be." So no, but it's difficult. I think so. The advice that I gave in a recent webinar about this topic was twofold. I think number one is for the community members. If you know anyone who is a new Muslim, you need to reach out to them. You need to call them. You need to text them. You need to show them that you're there. You need to text them and say, hey, hey, we're waking up for sahur in the morning. I'll text you and make sure you're up, Hey, what are you eating? These are some power foods. These that help you get through. Hey, just be there for that person. Put them in the WhatsApp group, reach out to them. Don't just text, but call. Really, really be there, in their face, kind of like, hey, how's it going? Are you making it through the fast? Wow. Okay, we're about to break the fast. 3, 2, 1, texting, be there with the person. They're going to need that. And so I think that's the Ansar responsibility, right? The Ansari responsibility is to go out of your way to وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُ الدَّارَ, those who prepared a home for those coming to them. Now we have to improvise. And tough situation is where you come up with the greatest ideas, because it's a difficult situation and you're forced to find a new way. So yes, this is not the ideal, and we're going to have to find a different way, but improvise, find a way to connect to those people. And the unfortunate thing is, if we haven't already been establishing those relationships, it's going to be nearly impossible to now nurture those relationships. And so this will teach us something, that we need to have those relationships built so that we can nurture them and be there for them in those difficult times. So the Ansari response is to just reach out and make sure you're there, overtly, just really, really reaching out to those people in the community who are new Muslims and they don't have that Islamic environment at home, so to speak. My other advice is for the new Muslims themselves. And so the question you asked, you actually specifically mentioned some people who are living in an environment, a house that is not conducive to the practice of Islam at all. For those people, my advice is what Sheikh Tareem said, which is Tarif said, I'm sorry, which is about the heart. Like, there's a few brothers I know right now who their household is not going to be happy with them fasting. They're hiding their iman. For them, my advice to them is like, Allah knows, Allah knows, Allah knows, Allah knows. There was once a man who, a sahabi, he came late to the masjid. Oh my goodness, guys, you won't believe this. I just got a text, and my phone is next to the computer, from a brother who 4 weeks ago converted, having gone through a few gender identity changes. His family, staunch Christian, accepted Islam, completely hidden from his family, completely hidden. Like, he didn't want anyone in the household to know. And and he just literally out of nowhere just messaged me right now. My wife has been messaging him. I've been messaging him. But it is just so ironic that in my mind, I'm thinking of him. And right now he literally messaged, and his question was something, do I have to do wudu before I read Quran? SubhanAllah, like that relationship is there so it can be nurtured now. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My point to the people in this situation like him is, again, Allah knows what's in the heart. And I was thinking of a Sahabi who one day he was coming to the masjid, and Sahaba were different. Like they would pray whenever the time came and the Prophet would start the prayer. So one Sahabi, he came a little late and the prayer was ending and they were coming out. And as he's walking in, he sees them coming out and he's like, is it over? And they're like, yeah, we just finished. And he was like, oh man. And so the Sahabi who heard that, he said, wait, I'll trade you the reward I got for praying in Jama'ah for the feeling that you felt when you said, oh man, I'll trade you the reward. Because he realized how much Allah values what we can't do, but we want to do. And so realizing that if you're in a tight situation where I cannot do this, my family, it will be World War III if I do this. Allah knows your situation. Allah knows. And the desire in your heart to want to do that is the most beloved thing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in fact, the humbling feeling that you get, those tears, those moments of I wish, are so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that many of us would be willing to trade the reward you're getting for not being able to do that. For those who do have an environment where they can do it, you have to, again, we're working on we're improvising right now. And so if you're a new Muslim who really doesn't know, your parents are fine, your family's fine, you can fast, but you're missing the community, then my advice to you is come to the community online this year. Come to the community online. Be a part of the webinars. Be a part, not for the shameless plug, but qalam, every morning I'm doing on Instagram morning adhkar of Wird Latif. Every single morning. Been doing it for 2 weeks, going to continue. At nighttime, we're doing 1 juz of Quran with just reflection of it. There are so many things that are being offered online from so many institutions that I think you're going to have to put yourself in those environments to benefit from where the community is. Obviously, it's not ideal, the benefit you get from sitting across the table from someone, sitting in the gathering, that is beloved. There's no trade for that. But we gotta, if you grew up, underprivileged, you learned how to improvise, and a milk crate became a basketball hoop when it became one. And that's what it was. And we played the best basketball games on that milk crate. I remember we used to play basketball on the street sign, and don't ask me how, but if you hit the sign, then you made the basket basically. And I can't mention the number of games we had that were so fun. And so my point is, yes, it's not ideal. The Ansar will have to step up. You got to reach out. You got to go through the phone book. You got to call around. Is there someone? And just someone under your wing this Ramadan. Like, all right, I got this brother. He just messaged me. This is my guy. I'm taking care of him the whole Ramadan. Maybe I got 2 more who I'm texting every day. Yo, you're going to wake up this morning for suhoor. Yo, the time starts at this. What are you eating? Hey, I hear if you eat, honey bunch of oats, it's great for you. Whatever it may be. But make them a part of this Ramadan. And then for the muhajirin, again, if you understand the terminology, those new people, for them, if you can't practice, Allah knows your situation better than you. It's what you desire that Allah sees. If you can practice, you have to look for all of those avenues online that are resources for you, like the FYI, like Qalam. I'm sure, Tarif, I'm sure you have some things going on. I'm positive, correct? Inshallah, you'll have something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, as a community members, we need to share these things, let the new Muslims know that these are there. And of course, this is, our 3rd string quarterback coming in, but this is all we can do right now, So that's my advice for the new Muslims. I would like to hear from the rest of the panelists, inshallah.
Whoever would like to go first.
Please, Dr. Samira. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, you shared a lot, Imam Mikhail, so there isn't that much to add. I think part of that is, the only thing I would probably add would be gentle on yourself. who are new, and kind of really think about what is it that you're yearning for. Social connection? Is it a spiritual connection? And it's oftentimes a difficult, lonely time period. But another thing to really kind of reflect upon, in addition to the social aspect that Imam Mikhail talked about, this is a great opportunity to really call on Allah and really think about the names of Allah and recognize that while you may be at home alone, Allah's still there, right? You're not alone. And to really reflect on all the different characteristics Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, to call upon Him and to use those opportunities to call. I know, there's different videos online on, dua and the names of Allah, and just really use that opportunity to strengthen that spiritual part within in your heart, and to use that to really reflect on what is it that this deen has really helped you in terms of navigating your realities. At the same time, make sure that while you're setting these new traditions and accepting Islam and integrating, don't lose your identity. Don't assume you have to take on the cultural identities of those around you. Understand and try to struggle with, well, what are going to be my foods? What are going to be my traditions? What do I want to take? And really kind of grapple with that without just accepting wholeheartedly everything around you. And so that would be another suggestion that I would have.
Jazakallah so much for sharing that, Dr. Ahmed, Sheikh Mikhail. Imam Tarif, in the interest of time, because I know we're down to like the last 10, 15, 20 minutes, hopefully 30 minutes, inshallah, depending on how much time you have, trying to squeeze in as many questions as we can. If you don't have anything more to add, is it okay if we segue to the next question?
Please, of course.
So one of the kind of like topics that comes up repeatedly when I speak with friends, one of my best friends and I were actually having a conversation 2 days ago, and she was talking about how like Muslims have become, in many cases, not all cases, have become so rooted in community, in the sense that like when Ramadan comes, like whether it's for iftar or tarawih prayer or qiyam or like what have you, there's so many different activities going on at the masjid during the month of Ramadan. And she shared that she was struggling with the idea of feeling isolated and disconnected this Ramadan. And so I know we talked a little bit about this earlier, and this might have been touched on in some of the other questions that we talked about a little bit, but what can we do to adjust our lifestyle and our schedules so that we don't lose that sense of connection? Even though everybody's going digital, how can we still maintain that sense of connection, inshallah?
Connection, you mean with each
with
other?
Our community, with the community in general.
I think so this was touched on earlier. But again, I bring it back to this. There has been this notion that is floated around. I remember whenever it was 5 weeks ago, I lost track of time. This is actually a good thing. Alhamdulillah, we lost track of time. We need to just kind of, subhanallah, right?
Honestly, Tarif, the blessings, I know we all struggle, but there are so much, the silver lining of this is amazing.
Barakallah feek, Imam. Wallahi, barakallah feek. So I remember, I'll never forget, it was a Muslim webinar. I attended it, and they were talking about being productive. I tell you, without even analyzing it, something wasn't comfortable in me. Be productive. Here's again the idea of be productive. Allah's saying slow down. Like, subhanAllah, I had to go think a lot about this because it affected me negatively as I was trying to be productive, right? What an invitation from Allah Azza wa Jal to just slow down. And if Allah Azza wa Jal has decided that I need to minimize, again, trusting in the hand of Allah. Dr. Smiri spoke about the names of Allah. Perhaps what we think is healthy for our well-being is not what it is. It's a journey of learning, gaining perspective. And I think, Imam Mikhail and Dr. Smiri mentioned on this idea of not being able to sit with ourselves even.
Yeah.
I love connections. I am like, Imam Mikhail, Dr. Smiri, you could speak so much about this. Even you, sister, Zainab, with all the work that you do, talk about connections and the power of this. But Allah has deliberately done this to us. And if we cannot sit still. And Allah says in the Quran, there's something so beautiful. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنَّكَ تَرَى الْأَرْضَ خَاشِعَةً فَإِذَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْهَا الْمَاءَ اهْتَزَّتْ وَرَبَتْ. The idea of khushu', right? We speak so much of khushu'. Salah delivers its greatest fruits in khushu'. What is khushu'? Stillness. When you're able to just be serene And he says, when you look at earth and it is serene, calm, then when the water falls on it, it vibrates and produces fruits. It's like, if we're not serene, how can we observe the light of Allah Azza wa Jalla? If we're running, and if I'm replacing the outside distraction of constant bombardment digitally, talking about the book, I'm going to go get it, Imam Mikhail.
Oh, it's a great one. It's a great one.
I
warn you, I'm warning you. I had a flip phone for 3 weeks after reading this.
Oh, subhanAllah.
3 weeks. Flip phone.
Barakallah. Wallahi, the greatest struggle I see with young people is just addiction to electronics. It's with my children. They can't sit still. And I work with them. They cannot. They're overwhelmed. And I say again, this comfort of feeling that seclusion and isolation to look within and grow and speak, open up intimately to Allah. And then the light of Allah will start to come in. It's not in the amount. It's not in being productive and so forth. Let me add one more thing here in terms of the connection. As we've heard, we have tons of opportunities to portion out a time to connect because we need it. There is no doubt that we need it. But Allah put us in this womb, in this cave, Kahf. You know, there's the idea in the Quran of Kahf. The subhanAllah, the cave for the youth in Surah Al-Kahf, the cave of Hira, where all the growth and the sacred encounters have happened. They didn't happen in the busyness of Mecca. They didn't happen in the busyness of Medina. Of Mecca or the town where the youth were from. SubhanAllah, the deepest transformations happen in those times of seclusion with Allah Azza wa Jal. But we need to portion out time, sure, for connection, but it's a reframing of what is optimal for our relationship with Allah Azza wa Jal. Because at the end of the day, what is it about? It's us and Allah, and we're going to be with Allah Azza wa Jal. Let me share one more thing here on the idea of just also the pain of it. The hardship is real. It's going to hit us hard. We're going to ache. Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when he was isolated, like, the example of Khadija dying, his uncle dying, he was isolated. What happened next? It was an overwhelming experience for him. Mi'raj, ascent to the heavens. Yeah. But also when he lost his son, Ibrahim, alayhi salam. Ibrahim, when he died, subhanAllah, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam held him, he cried. And what did he say? He said, إن القلب لا يحزن إن العين لا تدمع. He acknowledged the pain. So we need to remind people permission to be human. So when your heart is aching and not comfortable, alhamdulillah, that's the mercy of Allah. He said, my eye is tearing, my heart is aching, and we're not going to say anything but that which pleases Allah. Yeah. And Ibrahim, we're grieving over you. We're grieving over you. So grief, uncertainty, fear is part of the journey. It's part of the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And we need to permit ourselves to be human and understand it's part of the growth, but if we don't open ourselves to Allah, we're not going to grow. But again, there are these opportunities for connection. I don't want to dwell on or repeat what has been mentioned, but to further emphasize that the growth is happening in those sacred encounters of Allah in the private spaces of Allah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And Dr. Samir, if you don't mind, I would like to add something to, I think what he said, and I don't just mean to reiterate, but it's so important to realize that wherever we're at, there's a lesson that Allah wants us to learn from that situation. And if you dwell on how to get out of that situation, you won't learn the lesson that is meant to be learned in that situation. We are constantly fleeing things. We're fleeing our families. Unfortunately, domestic violence has gone up since we aren't able to flee. So many things have happened because we were fleeing. What I know, it's a hard Ramadan. It is different. But what Tarif is saying, what I am saying, what Dr. Samira is saying, we have to own it. And that growth mindset is about realizing where you're at and realizing that I'm growing through this difficulty right now. And I honestly, as Tarif and Dr. Samira, everyone is echoing the same thing, that this can be one of your best Ramadans. I can break my fast with little Qasim, who you just saw sneak in here. I can pray my Taraweeh, me and my wife. I can be together. And I'm forced by God, by society, by the powers that be. And I'm in Texas, so I might not be forced that long, guys. So anyways, I'm forced to be at home. And there's a hadith that many people don't know, that the Prophet ﷺ, he once said, وَلْيَسَعْكَ بَيْتُكَ. May your house be spacious enough for you. Many scholars highlight what this means is may you be comfortable at home. May you be comfortable. Some people, their house is so small, they feel claustrophobic. Not literally small, it's very big, many square feet, but gotta get out, gotta get out, gotta get out. And the Prophet in this dua said, may your house be big enough for you. And the scholars explain, may you be comfortable where you are. So again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but just really own this Ramadan. Realize it is harder, but find the silver lining there. Find the ability to connect to Allah, be alone with you and Allah. And again, if you're struggling, I'm not at all mitigating the difficulties of anxiety and depression and all these things. We have professionals in the community. And so definitely reach out if it gets very, very hard. But a little struggle is where the growth happens. And that's where we become better people. And so inshallah, I'm looking forward to this. And yeah, I just wanted to echo that again, because you said it so clearly. It's just beautiful. Jazakallah khair.
Dr. Samira, I cut out for a little bit, so I don't know if you answered that question. Do you have anything to add?
The one thing I did want to add that Imam Mikhail mentioned, that with this current pandemic, there has been an increase in domestic violence. And I think it's really important that we understand, if we know somebody in our community, in our family and friends, that may be in either an abusive house, either for a parent, for a spouse, check up on them and make sure that they know that they can, no matter what, they can reach out to you. You're constantly contacting them, checking up on them. They have a safety plan. If if you need to use. We also, on the FYI's wellness toolkit, during coronavirus toolkit, there's a list of resources that are available currently for individuals who are in domestic violence situations, in terms of calling and whatever additional shelters that they may need, that they can reach out to it. So I would encourage you, if you yourself is in a situation, to really look there and use the resources. 2, if you know anybody or suspect anybody, to really connect with them and let them know. You may reach out and they may say they don't need it. That's okay. Just make sure that they know you're interested, you care, you're checking in on them, and you're back. Because oftentimes it may take somebody, on average, they say it takes about 7 tries before somebody actually leaves. So frustrated, just be there for them, support them if they need it, let them know that you're there to help at any point.
Dr. Ahmed, I just wanted to say Jazakallah for raising that point, because we have seen a tremendous uptick in the number of cases of domestic violence and domestic abuse and different forms of dysfunctionality because of the pandemic. And many people are struggling in silence, not knowing that they have resources, they have organizations, they have experts who are ready and willing and who want to assist. So inshallah, one of the things we're going to be doing is also sharing resources for our communities, that if you or someone you know is going through this kind of a situation, to please don't wait, don't suffer in silence. That is not what Islam teaches us to do at all. And to make sure that you are taking your safety into your own hands and standing up for yourself, inshallah.
MashaAllah. Sister Zainab, if I can add one thing with this domestic violence issue, definitely 120% agree with everything that Dr. Samira said. We got to be there to help those who are in need right now. One of the things I've been working on through emotional intelligence of the Prophet ﷺ is educating the community that inter and intrapersonal emotional understanding is key to a Muslim's life. And what that simply means is that the ideal example of emotional intelligence and understanding oneself is shown to us through the prophetic example. And what that means is there's intrapersonal, meaning we're understanding our own emotions, and interpersonal, and we're understanding the emotions of other people. And so I'm speaking more on, teaching Muslims early on to prevent reaching that point where a person doesn't know how to handle their emotions. Now, definitely we need to deal with the emergency situations, and we need to be calling people, checking. What I want to also focus on, though, is 5 years from now, someone becoming an abusive spouse, father, mother, sister, brother, whatever it may be. And I think one of the cures to that is by studying the emotional intelligence, not a shameless plug here, I promise you guys, it's not a shameless plug, studying the emotional intelligence of the Prophet ﷺ and understanding that the hadith that Tarif said so beautifully, Innal ayna tadma wal qalb yahzun wa la naqulu. Our body cries, our heart hurts, but we control our actions. This is the whole summary of intrapersonal emotional awareness, understanding, and management. And so why do I say that? It's not necessarily directly connected to Ramadan, but as a Muslim, it's about understanding the Prophet ﷺ's understanding of his own emotions and how that makes us better spouses, better parents, and better community members.
On that point, there is something that I did want to go back to. So you were talking, Brother Tharif, you were talking about how you attended a webinar on productivity during this time. I feel like we're so surrounded by this fast-paced lifestyle that we always have to do something, that we always have to contribute something to society in order to be our best selves, right? So how do we give permission to ourselves and not feel guilty when we're not, being productive or productive? Yeah.
I read my mind there when she asked that question.
It's telepathy.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Dr. Samira. She's the expert on subhanAllah, I'm sure, giving us tips. And again, the idea of just it's called in psychology permission to be human. Like Rasulullah ﷺ illustrated that beautifully, talking about emotional intelligence. That Imam Mikhail, I need to get the book, man. I'm telling you.
I'll send you one right after this.
I heard so much about it. Wallahi, Allah knows.
I'll send it right after this.
SubhanAllah, I love this. I love the fact that our imams are just, mashallah, Imam Mikhail is leading the way on this. But the idea again of just being vulnerable and acknowledging that we're not capable of doing things. Sometimes we not only want to take things on, it's breaking us. And we have this facade, want to show up and show off, right? Constantly want to show up and show off. I mean, all of social media, most of it is ending up being a show off. And we're broken inside. These kids are depressed. And I say, name for me one session you go on when you go on your Instagram or whatever, aside from clearly healthy interactions where you're able to educate and so forth, or engage with friends in a healthy way. But aside from this, when do you ever feel good when you come out of checking Facebook posts or images? You're never good. You feel it, and the heart speaks to ourselves. So how about turning to the heart? And the heart speaks wonders. It's an ocean inside of us. We wouldn't even know that ocean. So acknowledging that we're weak, like subhanAllah, and you see the transformations again. Adam alayhi salam, when he made a mistake, Yunus in the belly of the fish, it was always like, Ya Allah, I am now witnessing that you're the one, because it was a moment of shahada, right? It's really all about shahada. Shahada is testimony. That's what we say, ashhadu. I'm seeing it right now that Allah is the one. Most of the time we're not seeing well. Allah now removed the veil. I feel like this whole, subhanAllah, adversity we're in is removing al-ghita'.
Yes, definitely.
Allah temporarily removed the veil for us to really see with vision, iron vision. Yeah. I feel like here it is, and it's going to be drawn again on our eyes.
Can you expound on that for a moment? What are we seeing more? What are we seeing more?
I mean, I feel like the testimony of Yunus alayhi salam in the belly of the fish, he had a thing he had to correct, right? Allah locked him up, removed the veil from his eye. You can't do anything, Yunus, and don't be hasty, and be patient and hang in there with trust and surrender, because he wanted his people to change by force. He left in wrath, he cut him off, and he said, La ilaha illa ant, no God but you, Allah. But then he said something powerful. When the veil is removed, he recognizes weakness. I can't do anything. And I should have really stuck around and surrendered, trusted.
Wow.
As you said, Imam Mikhail, I should have learned the lesson and not be hasty. But then he said this, I'm a wrongdoer. I wrong myself. I'm telling you, we have a lot of dhulm against ourselves in the imbalances of productivity, this, that. It doesn't mean we're not productive, but for what purpose? And are we being balanced with our hearts, souls, as you said, Imam Mikhail, also family? How about those priorities that have been missed, right? So that dhulm Allah speaks of dhulm, which is, oppression, injustice against ourselves. The notion of injustice in the Quran mostly is about the self. You
Wow.
wronged yourself. Acknowledge it, because I want to heal you. Allah is saying, I want to heal you. But if you don't acknowledge it, how are you going to heal? So the idea is, again, acknowledging first that we're weak, we're humans. It's okay to cry and ache, but also I have things that I need to really work on in my life, and they're breaking me and they're aching me and they're holding me back. And if I'm not even able to acknowledge to Allah, Ya Allah, I need your help right now, then the transformations happen. I don't, again, keep going back to this notion, but the idea here is that, we need to do things in life with the limbs ultimately, right? But if the heart is not healthy and sound, and Allah says in the Quran, إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ, the one that makes it, it's not going to be by quantity of things. Oftentimes we emphasize quantity, but not focused attention. For sure. That's the problem. We're caught up in the rat race of production, produce to impress and to feel good about it. And then we're attached to it and addicted to that production, as opposed to sincerity, presence, focused attention on maybe lesser things, but that have the barakah of Allah Azza wa Jal. And I'm going to just pause here. Generalities, perhaps.
Beautiful.
Allahu A'lam.
Those words, just subhanAllah, I feel like I personally have benefited so much from this webinar, subhanAllah, because as a workaholic, these are words, Imam Tarif, that spoke to my heart. I can assure you that, subhanAllah, that I think that anybody who watches this webinar, I think, inshallah, will benefit from inshallah, from the wisdom and the words and the thoughts that you've shared, inshallah. I know that we are short on time. We've gone past the 1 hour mark. I wanted to give the opportunity to all of our panelists, esteemed panelists, to share a couple final words, if you have any final thoughts for anybody who's still struggling to, accept this reality of this Ramadan. Any words of comfort or solace, or if not, we can just go straight to dua. If Sheikh Mikhail, if you could please honor us by doing a closing dua for us.
Yeah. I mean, I've said enough. Tarif and Dr. Samira, and nothing more other than the fact of just acceptance and human beings, not human doings. We're called human beings. We're not called human doings. Learn how to be. Learn how to be. Learn how to be. And so this Ramadan, I'm going to try to be with Allah. I'm trying to be with myself, and I'm going to be with my family. And that's it. I'm going to be with them. That's it. And so that's my advice to myself. Just learn how to be. My daughter, she's only 7. My son's only 4. All they want from me is to be there. That's it. And so if I learn how to be with Allah, be with myself, and be with my family, I'm good. I've gained a great Ramadan.
Beautiful. Beautiful. MashaAllah.
Okay, should we make a dua? Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Allahumma inna nas'aluka hubbak wa hubba man yuhibbuk wa hubba amalin yuqarribuna ila hubbik. Ya Allah, we ask you to allow us to see the blessed month of Ramadan. We ask you to allow us to see the blessed month of Ramadan. We ask you to make this Ramadan a month of blessing like we've never seen before, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, we ask you to get the best out of the blessings that we don't realize are blessings, but we know and trust that there is something hidden in these things from you, Ya Allah. We ask you to give us the wisdom, the patience, and the ability to truly get those blessings, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, those of our community members who are struggling, Ya Allah, those of our community who are struggling, however it may be, financially struggling, those who are struggling domestically, Ya Allah, those who are struggling spiritually, mentally, or emotionally, Ya Allah, we ask you, we beg of you, Ya Allah, help them with your nusra from the ghaib, Ya Allah. Give them strength, Ya Allah. We beg of you, Ya Allah. We turn to you because there is no one else to turn to. Give them strength, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, we ask you to accept all of our worship, Ya Allah. All of our shortcomings, we ask you to overlook them and forgive them, Ya Allah. We ask you to make this a transformative Ramadan, Ya Allah. Make this a month of Ramadan where we change ourselves to better. We recognize the good in ourselves and we thank you for that. And we recognize the bad and we seek forgiveness and become better from the days after Ramadan, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Ya Allah, we ask you to heal those of our country and our community who are sick. Ya Allah, we ask you to alleviate the sickness and the struggles that our country and the world is going through right now. We turn to you, Ya Allah. We turn to you with our open hands. We beg of you, Ya Rabbil Alameen. We ask you for your help, your divine blessing and rahmah, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursalin. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Ameen, Ya Allah.
Ameen. Jazakumullah khair.
Jazakallah khair, everyone. Thank you.
Beautiful dua, very powerful dua. I feel so spiritually rejuvenated myself. And I wanted to suggest Jazakumullah khair to our panelists for making the time to be here today to share your pearls of wisdom, your knowledge and your insights, and to Iman as well for co-hosting this with me. And I wish all of you a blessed month of Ramadan.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Imam Mikhail.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I'm going to reach out to you, inshallah.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr.